party's over.
I don't think so.
Take a seat. We would be honored if you would join us.
Welcome to Star Wars After Party. Last minute game check on the mic. We're all good. We're all set. And we're back. Yes, we know. We're 1 week late. I got sick, sue me. I couldn't get your boy sick, too. I mean, we couldn't. Plus, I couldn't talk anyways. We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Star Wars. And we're going to be talking about a lot of Star Wars. We missed the 10-year anniversary of Rebels by 1 week. We're going to talk about it still. We're going to talk about Obi Wan Season 2. We're going to talk about Star Wars Outlaws. We're going to talk about Star Wars comics. We're talking about it all. And with me, long has he waited, it's Cameron Porter.
What is up, Tyler? How you feeling?
I'm feeling great now.
Better?
Yeah. I mean, I feel a lot better than, I guess it was a little over than a week now, but it's like, had my head in a bucket, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun. It was like the sickest I've been in like a decade.
Oh, wow.
Because I don't ever get, I don't ever get sick. And then I like completely lost my voice after. So that was great for Kayla because I honestly wasn't talking.
Not really conducive to a podcasting lifestyle.
Not at all. It really wrecked everything that I have going on in my life. But I think I could still hear it a little bit in my voice. But,
yeah, I can't. You definitely sound a little.
I know. It's not my normal self, but we should be good. And I'm excited. I know you went out of town. We'll keep it Star Wars, I promise.
Yeah.
But Cameron went to the final Furnace Fest until they bring it back in a few years.
I hope so.
The tickets will be astronomical.
Maybe so.
$2,000 to catch one night, but Cameron will be there.
Yep.
Did you have a good time?
Dude, it was a blast.
Anything Star Wars while you were there? Some Star Wars.
No, nothing Star Wars, but I will say on the last day I don't know if I've worn it on the podcast or not. I've got this tan Comfort Colors shirt that says Tatooine on it.
Nice.
And it's got like a little it looks like a Patagonia shirt.
Okay.
Like it's got a little mountainscape and then the letters are in Patagonia font and it just says Tatooine. And I wore it on Sunday. And there were a couple I could see out of the corner of my eye a couple of people a couple of guys pointing at it being like, "Whoa." So if you catch any videos online from any particular bands on Sunday, you might see me flying across the stage and jumping on people with that Tatooine shirt on.
We need to get a Star Wars After Party shirt with a QR code on the back.
Yeah.
Linking people to the feed.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, man, I'm glad that you had a good time.
It was a great.
That we're all on the mend. Hopefully everyone out there listening, there was like a lot of funk going around here. Hopefully you're good where you are. And we're going to be talking about, like we said, Rebels. Mm-hmm. There's some Obi Wan Kenobi news, meaning just Ewan McGregor opened his mouth at a Comic-Con. That's news enough. And we're gonna do a quick update on Star Wars Outlaws. So let's do that because
tell me.
I mentioned this in the bonus episodes. Even though I was sick, there were a couple of bonus episodes that have gone out between the last show and this one over on our Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the pod and getting some bonus content, you can go to patreon.com/Star Wars After Party if you are so inclined. We do greatly appreciate it, of course. But I talked about how there was a patch that just went out for Star Wars Outlaws, and it was a big one. There was lots of stuff.
Was it a game changer?
I will say this. Dad joke noted. Yep. Everybody, I think we all got that. Did you guys get that? I got it. I'll say this. I've played for about an hour since downloading the new patch, and it does feel like the game is moving a bit smoother. I no longer. I will say this. There were some things that I know were addressed that I haven't seen yet. Just because it was like an hour of a game. I was in the middle of a mission, but I did do a little bit of riding on the little speeder bike, and it didn't make me want to throw my controller through my TV like I usually do. So
Solid.
that's good. Less, but it's still glitching out. Like there was this one part of the mission I was doing where I was like, oh, I guess I'm going to go under there. And then I looked and I was like, oh no, that's just a random hole in the floor. That doesn't actually exist. It's just the graphics or something messing. I don't know.
No.
So there's still issues, man. This game, it's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love the story. I'm at the point now where we're kind of building a crew. So like I want to be very upfront with my experience with the game. Like it's fun whenever you're doing the Star Wars things in the game. It's just that lately it had been dampered with all of the issues, but I will say things do feel a little bit better. The stealth is feeling a little bit more improved. I feel like they worked on that. And apparently one of the things they said that they addressed, which I haven't seen yet, is that they have fixed some of they've done a better job syncing the animatic movement of the mouth with the dialogue of the game, because it was
bad.
It was so bad. It was just like, did you even try?
Oh no,
it was that bad. So apparently they fixed some of those things, but I will say I'm still enjoying the game. I'm working through it pretty slow, but it's still a good time. And I actually got to do some space battle sequences, and those were fun.
Yeah,
those were real fun. Yeah,
nice.
So there's a lot of good stuff to be said about the game, and the things that have not been as good, they are working on. I am going to note that Ubisoft did delay the next Assassin's Creed game like 4 months.
Oh wow!
Presumably for the reason why they should have
delayed this one,
game.
huh?
Yeah, because it just was not. I'm not a video game expert, but the game just was not ready. It just wasn't ready. So they're taking care of it. So kudos to them.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm stoked about it. Before we get into Obi Wan and Rebels, because they're kind of connected in my mind, and I'll explain why. I do want to bring a brief attention to Star Wars, the Battle of Jakku, Insurgency Rising. So this is the new Star Wars Marvel comic line that just launched last week. I said that I would read it before we came back on the show. I have read it. Cameron, you haven't, right?
Nope, not yet.
So I'm going to keep it spoiler free, which I was going to do either way. I will say this about it. It's definitely playing a nice game of setup.
Mm-hmm.
I felt as though the art was, not exactly my favorite there, Cameron.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see, I doubt you can see it on YouTube. I'm not going to get up or anything, but it's just, the style is a little, I'll say like kid-like.
Yeah.
It looks a little bit more like how I would expect for a kid's Star Wars comic to look.
It looks real hyperspace stories-esque.
Yes,
kinda.
very hyperspace stories-esque. I like that. There is a trend, I suppose, in comics that lately they want to have two stories. So there's like the first story that's 20 pages and the second story that's 10 or so. And I don't always care for that, and that's what they've done here. So that's not my favorite, although I do prefer the art on the back story here a little bit more.
Yeah.
Not my favorite either, but it's big on the setup. It's literally right after the Battle of Endor, which I wasn't expecting. I was thinking it was going to go a couple years.
Pick up a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. But it's intriguing the way they're setting up the Imperial Remnant here. And I guess this guy, this main villain dude here, apparently his name is Grand Moff Adelhard.
Adelhard.
And apparently he was in like a mobile game or something like that. I feel like I've heard. So he's like a returning fan favorite that I'd never heard of. Whatever. But I will say it's setting it up. And there's going to be 12 issues total. So plenty of time for it to get nice and
developed,
hot.
And,
there should be the second issue before next week. So I will do my best to read it before next week. I will say it's off to a promising start, even if I'm not the biggest fan of the art. I think the artist is going to be changing pretty regularly. So I wouldn't throw out the whole series just because,
When did you say the next issue comes out?
next issue comes out next week, so it'll be Wednesday the 16th, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah, there'll be 2 issues out by then, and there's going to be 4 total, and then they're going to go into the next, and then the next. There's 3 mini series, each with 4 issues.
Yeah.
12 total for the Battle of Jakku arc.
Interesting.
And then who knows where they're going to go after that.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's cool to be in that part of the timeline.
Yeah, I'll definitely swing by this weekend and pick up my books for sure.
Also out is Star Wars Ewoks.
Yep.
And there's a couple new High Republic adventure books that are out that I've
Have you flipped through Ewoks to see if it is truly just like no dialogue?
Not yet. You want me to check?
Yeah. Well, let's check.
Keep us going, Cameron.
Yeah. Because they had this one-off Ewok. I think we talked about it a little bit last week or 2 weeks ago. They had this one-off Ewok issue that was literally no dialogue, the whole comic.
Right.
It was just watching Ewoks. And it was a little bit, I don't know, they just played out a little bit dully.
Here's a quick spoiler alert. All right. Well, right off from the jump, we've got
Words. Good.
Actually, the Ewoks are talking.
Oh,
so
wow.
We're getting Ewok dialogue, which
Nice.
I'm not entirely certain that does that normally happen?
No.
Anyways, so it seems like we're getting maybe a quick retelling of Return of the Jedi. Okay, so this is interesting.
That looks like the character from...
Yeah, so it's
gonna tie in.
It will tie in with the Battle of Jakku stuff because there's Moff Adelhard, and not only that, but I did see. Yeah, that looks like. Does that look like? That's weird. Almost for a second, that looked like Boba Fett to me. Like it looked kind of like Tim Morrison. But it looks like some Zuckuss and. What's his name?
Forlom.
Forlom. A couple other bounty hunters. So
Nice.
we got some bounty hunter action. It looks interesting. And then a
looks
bunch
good.
of Grinches. What is that? That's weird. But anyway, yeah, the art looks better.
Yeah.
But okay, well, it's not that. It's not what we got last year when it was like that one-off Ewoks thing for the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that. It does appear that there's a little bit more going on. So cool.
Solid. Yeah.
I'm down to check it out. I always give it a try. So yeah, Star Wars Ewoks. Pick that up too.
Yeah.
Apparently it's part of the story.
I think all I have at home right now is Shadows of Starlight 4 to read.
Okay.
I was looking because I've got a I've got a drawer in my computer desk where I keep my stack of comics to read, and I didn't realize how much everything had kind of slowed down. I'm used to there being 5-6 comics in that stack at all times, and I opened it up the other day and looked. I was like, dang, just the one.
Yeah, as far as how often they're coming out, this week was a bigger week because I had 2 Dark Horse books and then Ewoks. Lately, it's only been 1 or 2 tops for the Star Wars line. There's been some weeks where I'd go in and there's no Star Wars in my pool, so it has slowed down quite a bit. I think that's probably a good thing. I'd like for them to sort of organize what it is they're trying to tell. High Republic stuff is really winding down. I thought it was over. Maybe it is for the Marvel stuff, but no, maybe there's one more. I don't know. I can't keep up. But it is slowing down, and it does seem to be coming towards a conclusion.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means for our boy Marcion Rowe.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in what that
where
story
they take him. Yeah.
So we'll see about that. But, I don't know. Well, I'm not exactly sure when they're wrapping that stuff up. What I am sure about is it's been 10 years since Rebels.
Yeah.
So we'll talk Rebels, and then we'll pivot into a little bit of Obi Wan discussion a little bit later. So Cameron, talk to me about. I figure we'll just sit here and reminisce about Rebels a little bit. Maybe we'll talk about some favorite arcs, maybe some characters, maybe some things we'd like to see from the Rebels crew in the future. We know that they're playing a big role, with Ahsoka in season 2, where that's going, the whole Mandoverse thing. The Rebels crew feels as pertinent to that story as Han, Luke, and Leia in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
if not more so.
Maybe
to be
more
honest.
so. Yeah.
So that said, let's talk a little bit about Rebels. When did you first get into Rebels? Do you remember where you jumped in, and maybe was it while it was airing, or was it Disney Plus? Tell me about it.
No, yeah, it was Disney. It was definitely during Disney Plus. I'm trying to remember. To be completely honest with you, I probably watched it upon your recommendation at some point.
Sounds like it's a possibility.
So it was a couple of years
you
ago.
mean I was going around telling people to watch Rebels?
Yeah.
Man,
Well, I
all right.
think we were just in a conversation about Star Wars, and maybe you mentioned something about giving it a shot. And it was just in a particular time I was really like fiending for something Star Wars, something new to me. So I finally like got into it, and it wasn't as much the way that Clone Wars was, but it did take a couple of episodes to really get into it. So they did a good job with that taking less time for me, considering there were less seasons of the show than Clone Wars. But no, I watched it all I think I stopped about halfway through it for an extended period of time and then picked it back up.
Okay. Did you watch Clone Wars first, then Rebels?
Yeah, Clone Wars first and then Rebels. Yep. And there are like very key moments that really stand out to me. Just a handful. I can speak better on my interpretation of the characters because their personalities kind of stick with you. But a lot of really great tie-ins in Rebels. With it following Ezra and his development as a Jedi was fantastic. And I enjoyed the show. I remember when it ended, and there are a couple of very specific moments that I was like completely forgot I was watching an animated show. It really, I feel like Rebels pulled you in emotionally more than Clone Wars did.
I could see a case being made for that.
Yeah.
Because it was more focused around a small crew, whereas Clone Wars was very
spread out. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yep. You form a lot of attachment to the characters.
Yeah.
And then you feel really pulled in when they're, going through stuff or things are happening. Yeah. I'm trying not to give any spoilers here. Yeah.
We're gonna spoil it. We're gonna spoil it. I think as I think back to Rebels and my first time watching it, actually very specific time because it began airing a year before The Force Awakens. So at the time, it was like the first new Star Wars under Disney. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know if anyone was watching it as it was airing. Let me pause. Of course I know. I'm saying for our listening and viewing audience. But I remember watching it as it was airing. And I remember specifically being roommates with our boy Jeff, shout out Jeff, and being at his place. I was renting a room for him before we bought ours. And I remember being in my room and downloading and watching it on like Toonova, I think is what it was. Just some cartoon website. Yeah. And that's how I was watching it. Sorry, Disney. Don't worry, you get my money now. And at the time, I'd watched the Clone Wars and was anxiously awaiting The Force Awakens. Yeah. And I remember thinking like, all right, like this is the first thing Disney Star Wars. And you have to consider too that it was a very different landscape in 2014 and 2024, meaning the MCU was awesome. Oh yeah. Everyone loved the MCU. Yeah. And as far as I could tell, was just a general nerd. Like I'm sure if you scour the internet, there were always haters, but like for the most part, people were like, yo, Disney has been killing this Marvel stuff because during that time, it was like Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of great. Oh, yeah. This is maybe there was one or two Avengers, but this was 5 years before Endgame, which is like the peak. Right. And so like man, it was just like Disney was killing it with Marvel. And so I feel like a lot of people, there were probably some people that were a little pessimistic about Star Wars and Disney, but I think those were the same people that didn't like the prequels. For me, I was like, Star Wars has always been great. Disney's killing this Marvel thing. I have high hopes. And I remember going into Rebels and loving it. For me, it was like straight up like, yes, I like this. Obviously, it's pre me having a podcast, pre me even probably listening to Star Wars podcasts, just a Star Wars nerding by himself. And I was loving it. And I felt like for me initially, although now I don't know if I had to pick, I'd probably pick Clone Wars, but initially it was so much more up my alley just because it was firmly rooted in that original trilogy kind of vibe and timeline.
Yeah.
There were stormtroopers, there were the original trilogy John Williams type cues, and everything felt that way. And so I was just so much more into it. I don't know. And
then Clone Wars?
Yeah.
You feel like, huh?
Yeah, at first. Now, like I said, with everything said and done, they each have their pros and their cons, and I love them both for different reasons.
Yeah.
The big thing is like what you said, where you were talking about how it focuses around the Ghost Crew. And I think that that's a big win for the show. The fact that it's a tighter, narrower focus, not unlike Bad Batch. So I think for me that was a big, I would say like a good start to the Star Wars Disney. And I felt that way for several years, and I still feel that way for the most part now. I'm pretty positive about what we get. But as far as like the animated stuff, like Rebels is very high up there for me. What about you? If you were, put a lightsaber to your head, are you, when it comes to like Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch, how does it fare?
And
it doesn't have to be like I have to pick a favorite. More of just like, is it in line quality wise with like a Clone Wars? And maybe we can talk about the quality of the animation versus the quality of the stories. I feel like those are different subjects.
Let's see. Animation, obviously, Bad Batch is my number one slot.
Yeah.
Part of that is just with the fact that it's the most recent. So obviously it's had the most, development.
Also a return to the 3D style of Clone Wars.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Storyline wise, that's a tough one. Honestly, maybe Rebels because of its like conciseness. I want to say I like Clone Wars storyline better just because it is so expansive, but Rebels, you're talking about how it feels very original trilogy, but they do such a good job of pulling in aspects from not only prequel trilogy era, but specifically Clone Wars.
Absolutely.
Bringing in the continuation of the Maul arc from Clone Wars to Rebels, or bringing Rex in from Clone Wars to I think there was a lot of really good translation in how they picked up some things from prequel era Star Wars and threw it into this. Yeah. And I think it blended very well.
I think you're right on with that. And, you mentioned story-wise, one of the things that seems so different about Rebels is that every season really had a tight narrative. You know, it was like rescue Lothal or take down the TIE Defender program, or there were these different things that seemed to be a bit more focused. And there were sometimes part 1, part 2s, or there would be like a string of episodes that sort of followed a similar thing, but it wasn't like the Clone Wars, where I would say with the Clone Wars it was more like arcs, and you would sort of chart characters over the course of 7 seasons, more so than it was like there's a specific thing that's happening. Whereas with Rebels, it was definitely like, I would say like the point of Rebels was like to liberate Lothal. And I think that is, it's cool. It's cool that it was also a bit smaller in nature in every way. Like not just we're following one crew that acts like a family, but also like this isn't the Chancellor talking to the Grand Master of the Jedi with the giant clone army doing these huge battles. it was way smaller than
Way
that.
smaller, yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed each season having a singular, like, overarching theme.
Yeah.
Clone Wars, you kind of get lost in it a bit because they jump around so often and have so many mini arcs throughout it. But I enjoy a concise, like, here's the goal for the season. Here's the focus. And yeah, saving Lothal. I liked how tied to Lothal the whole show remained. Like,
Right.
with Ezra and his, like, quest for trying to figure out what happened to his parents and who they were, you know, there's a lot tied to his character in, like, where he comes from and his home planet. So I think it was really cool how it always kind of came back to that.
Okay.
And then I would say, you know, a theme throughout the whole entire show is Ezra on this quest for his identity.
Yeah.
So, you know, you got each season has this concise storyline with little things happening along the ways, but the whole show as an entirety is his journey.
Yeah. So let's talk characters for a minute.
Yeah.
If I had to, again, you know, lightsaber to the head, trying to pick me a favorite character in Rebels, I'll pitch it to you here in a sec. I'll go first. I'll say Sabine Wren. I really like Sabine a lot.
Yeah.
She's obviously, you know, Mandalorian, super cool, a bit rigid, but also interesting in the fact that she's, you know, an artist, like a very multifaceted character, which, you know, of course we later got to see her in Ahsoka, and I think Ahsoka did a fantastic job showing a very true to her character self on the live action side. But I mean, Sabine, definitely a big favorite for me throughout the series. What about you? Do you have some favorite members of the Ghost Crew?
I would say either Sabine or Kanan. Kanan's a close second. Yeah. I if I go down the list, I remember there were times that I was really frustrated with Zeb as a character.
Why is that?
I don't know. Just his aggression and earlier on in the show when he and Ezra like butted heads a lot.
Yeah. That was definitely a big part of his character development, was him sort of relaxing over time.
Right.
And I mean, I know exactly what you mean. It was also just kind of frustrating. That was definitely like one of those things that was more geared towards kids, like them having this like big brother,
Playful,
little brother
yeah.
kind of thing. But when you think about it, you know, and consider we're going to be getting him in the Mando movie, and we're going to be getting him presumably in other shows and everything. Like, he's definitely a lot more relaxed when we briefly saw him in Mando, but especially towards the end of Rebels. And it makes sense when you consider the fact that, you know, his entire species had been destroyed.
Yeah.
So him kind of mellowing out over the course of the show is a good part of his character development. What about Kanan is really does it for you?
Kanan just had such a like peaceful resolve about him.
Yeah.
So like more often than not, he also, I would say, probably overcame the most adversity in his development. And
talk about having the trauma from the past. I mean,
yeah,
you know, we see it really well in Bad Batch, but for those who haven't maybe watched or, you know, read comics or anything like that, just the fact that Kanan's, you know, Jedi Master was killed right in front of him by clone troopers, and he went on the run as a young child. Like, yeah. So please keep going.
Yeah. Even in the show, just some of the things that he went through, and for him to never really lose himself.
Right.
He had to be so dependable for everybody. Hera is kind of an unsung hero because of her also like calm resolve and ability to like
she's definitely mom.
Think critically. Yeah. She takes care of everybody. But, you know, Kanan had Ezra to really develop, who he didn't necessarily want to at times, and they butted heads a lot, but he was always just consistent, I felt like, as a character.
Yeah, and you mentioned a second ago regarding Kanan, the fact that he was kind of resilient through the show. Think about him being blinded by Maul,
Right.
in the was at the end of the second season. I think it was the big season 2 finale with Vader and Ahsoka and all that stuff. Which, if you haven't watched Rebels and you just heard that, that's right.
Yep.
You definitely want to watch Rebels. But Twilight of the Apprentice, him being blinded, having to deal with this, I guess you could call it a critical injury. I mean, it definitely changed the way they had to live his life, and he learned from the Bendu, and there was that whole arc. But I would say, he really found himself through having to deal with all of his struggles and all of his trials. I remember just very specifically this one line right before he ultimately meets his demise, where he cuts his hair and he says, "I know what I have to do."
Yeah.
He knew, he just had this vision about him that he finally found what his purpose really was, his ultimate purpose, and which was essentially to ensure the survival of the Rebels crew, because they would all go off to do great things.
Yeah.
And so he sacrificed himself for that, but it was through all of these trials that you're talking about that he understood that's essentially
that's what it was growing him into.
Yeah, it was his calling to do that. So it's very, very interesting. But Kanan's a great character. Good pick on your end.
I felt like thinking about the impact that he had on the characters around him, I feel like the Ezra that we get to see in Ahsoka is very, very, very much a reflection of obviously as his master, he's going to reflect him,
that's a good point.
But just his mannerisms and the way that he's matured as a person in Solace, someone who started out as just a spazzy boy, headstrong,
he was Aladdin basically.
To have that sense of humor and sense of identity.
Yeah.
It's
so I'm thinking about Ezra in Ahsoka, and one of the things that I would say in the way that he seems to deal with Kanan is with a great deal of respect. He very much grew to respect Kanan. I remember there were multiple times through their relationship where I think Kanan definitely was dealing with a bit of a imposter syndrome. He wasn't ready to be a master because he felt like he himself never even finished his training. So how could he possibly train someone else if he's not equipped himself? And so there was always a bit of a rub there. But I can remember there was one, I want to say it was early in season 1, whenever they were trying to find Luminara before ultimately finding her dead body, Ezra told Kanan, he's like, "I don't just want any teacher, I want you to teach me." He had a great deal of respect for Kanan, and it's evident in Ahsoka, and it's really cool. Of course, they're going to butt heads over the course of the 4 seasons of the show, but it was cool to see that blossom and develop, and like you said, for them to do such a great job of, now when we see Ezra, we can see a little bit of Kanan too. So,
definitely.
Good pickups there.
Yeah.
What about favorite episodes? I actually watched one of my favorite episodes today, and it might get us into our next topic here. So, what about you? What are some of your favorite? I was about to say Clone Wars, favorite Rebels episodes.
That one is definitely a favorite. There's an episode where they are retrieving supplies.
That sounds like about 5 different.
Yeah, well, there's.
Hey, ChatGPT, write me a Rebels episode. Episode opens up with the Rebels
retrieving
looking for supplies.
No, they're retrieving supplies from this old hangar bay.
It was the same base. Are we thinking of the same one?
Maybe.
It was the same base that we meet the Bad Batch in season 7 of Clone Wars. It's I forget the name of the base. Could be 2 different bases.
Well, it had these monsters or animals. So okay.
You remember in season 7 when we meet Bad Batch, when they're flying in to meet Anakin and Obi Wan? Do you remember that?
Was that? Oh yeah, that was on that one.
That's the same base. Yeah, I'm gonna look it up just to verify. But please.
Yeah, I remember that was a really cool one that stuck out to me. Obviously, twin sons.
Oh,
that you're
that's
talking
the one I
about.
watched today.
Yeah, we get an incredible. Well, I'll let you talk through it a little bit, but
No, that's good. Feel free.
we get this great showdown of Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, which wound up being a lot. It wound up being a lot shorter than anticipated. This episode builds all this tension. Ezra's looking for Obi-Wan, Maul's looking for Obi-Wan, and then it all comes together in this like really beautiful moment where Obi-Wan and Maul face each other, and then Maul meets his end. There's a lot of good lines in that episode. Ezra discovers a lot about himself, obviously. With him being how he is, he followed a holocron, right?
Yes.
To Maul. He felt this calling against, obviously, Kanan's directive.
Apparently different planets. Sorry.
Oh, they are?
Please keep going.
Dang. And then by the end of it, he realizes, like...
It's a trap.
Yeah, well...
I did it.
Yeah.
No! I talked all that crap 2 weeks ago.
And here you are.
Oh, man. I become what I
swear to destroy.
No!
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, I mean, he winds up realizing, like, the Ghost Crew is who his family is.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
He ran off. That was a good one. And obviously the episode that Kanan meets his end as well is probably one of the most beautiful episodes of Star Wars, animated or live scene. I would say that sacrifice, that death scene was it definitely it was a tearjerker. Was that the finale of the
No, it wasn't. That's what's so cool about it.
It was season 3.
Dude, it was season 4. Because there were 4 seasons total, but it was like episode 11 or 12 of 16. There was a good bit of show left.
Yeah.
Which I like when shows do that.
Me too.
Like, don't kill a main character in the final episode
and then just call it. Yeah,
I'm not a fan.
Give me a little bit more of like where they go from there.
Right. Let me see them pick up the pieces at least a little bit. Want to make sure they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the things that show does great. Sorry, I just got some weird news about Star Wars. Weird news. It's just we'll talk about it in the next segment. Yeah. So you mentioned, of course, one of the best episodes, Twin Sons. I mentioned it earlier, but like Twilight of the Apprentice.
Yeah.
Those episodes. There's also, I can't remember them off the top of my head. Oh well, there's one of them I think was called World Between Worlds. But a World Between Worlds episode, the episode that preceded that, which I think was Doom, his death. Then I think there was one more episode, and then there was the next episode was World Between Worlds, because a big part of World Between Worlds was that Ezra wanted to go and rescue Kanan.
Yeah.
But obviously, it wouldn't work, because if he pulls Kanan out, well, as Kanan, then Ezra would be dead, and then he wouldn't be able to pull Kanan out.
Yeah.
So, I don't even know. I'm not getting into all that.
Gets you into that whole like traveling in the past and changing things and how it affects the future.
But that the World Between Worlds and the way that Ahsoka really had to walk Ezra through letting go of his master, because Ahsoka had to do that a little bit of herself once she thought Anakin was dead. Then B, she finds out that actually it's Vader. Like, she had to let go of her master multiple times.
Yeah.
She was still dealing with it some, of course, in Ahsoka. But yeah, man, it was just I would just say that Twilight of the Apprentice, World Between Worlds, Twin Sons, all of those are up there as like great, top notch.
Yeah.
And the finale's great too. And I love the way they did the post credit scene. I remember just being like so fired up, because you remember like,
yeah, I forgot about that.
It's basically the first episode of Ahsoka in some ways. And so, I remember when the show finished feeling like fulfilled. It was a great story, but then also having this promise of like, we're not done. Sabine and Ahsoka, they're going to go find Ezra. Now we live on the other side of that.
Yeah.
That's happened. Like, we've gotten that story, but there was just something about that kind of ending. The kind of ending that says we're done and we're done. Like we were like, yep, we're done. They're dead. This guy's dead. This guy's gone. Like it was definitely done. But then kind of like, but there's more adventure coming. I mean, I don't know. For me, that's like the best kind of ending that I could possibly get.
Yeah. I'm kind of reminiscing on that finale and how they closed the show now. So and how it tied into Ahsoka. Honestly, what's been occupying the background of my brain during us talking about this is thinking more and more about Ahsoka and how I need to
I'm
go
watching
back
Ahsoka tonight, bro. I'm so excited to watch Ahsoka after this. I don't know why. You're right. It's like so connected in some way. But yeah, I had the thought about 5 minutes ago. I went, yeah, I'm watching Ahsoka tonight. Yeah. So I'm definitely going to watch Ahsoka tonight.
That's a good idea.
I'm pumped. So Twin Sons. You mentioned earlier that, yeah, it's set in the original trilogy time, but there's also like all of this connection to the prequels and there's connection to Clone Wars. And we got that big in the episode Twin Sons, where ultimately Maul and Obi Wan Kenobi, more like old Ben Kenobi, have their final duel. Yep. And it is a fitting one, and it's epic in all the cool ways, even if it's not the way you might would expect. Yeah. And it really does this nice job of tying in all of those things in a way that I feel like it's just really good when Star Wars can do that, when it can unify. Oh, man, this is directly calling back to Episode 1, the battle between Qui-Gon and Darth Maul. This is directly calling back to the Clone Wars and the way that Maul, was out during that time, and him and Obi-Wan having so much really just like beef
unresolved.
So many problems and so much tension. He says, you took everything from me. And so like for him to have this hatred towards Kenobi, to be so driven by vengeance, and it still be like, hello there, Ezra Bridger. Like it's like old Ben. It's A New Hope. It's Tatooine. Luke Skywalker's right there. You hear Luke, and it's like the old recording from A New Hope. Like everything is so beautifully tied together. Yeah. And I want to take that idea and I want to talk about our next little piece of news here, because it got my
third eye open.
My third eye, tinfoil hat. It's all open and on. I just saw Jedi Power Battle returns. StarWars.com. That was the weird news I said I saw. So I've shared before on the pod that Jedi Power Battles was the first Star Wars game that I ever really got into. And it looks like it was just announced today that they are bringing it back, baby. Dang. There's a pre-order up for it now. The game is being, I guess, remastered, and it'll be out January 23rd, 2025.
Heck yeah.
So I will actually probably buy it, which makes me feel like you whenever you did Battlefront. Yeah. So hopefully they do me better than they did you.
I hope for your sake that's a better experience for you.
It can't play much worse. It wasn't exactly the best.
Who's making it?
That's a great question, Cameron. How are you going to hit me with that after I come back out of the news article? I'm just kidding. Great question, and I am reading through real fast. Bro, I don't see, man. I don't think it says. I'll just give this quick little bit instead of being so secretive. Taking down battle droids has never been more fun. And yes, Mace Windu has his purple lightsaber in hand this time, because it wasn't purple because at that time Attack of Clones had not come out. Wow. So I think Mace Windu had I want to say he had a blue lightsaber, if I'm not mistaken. Dang. 25 years after its original release, Jedi Power Battles is back. It does say. The action-packed adventure from Lucasfilm Games and Aspire is coming to PS.
There you go, yeah.
PlayStation, Switch, PC, and Xbox. Like Star Wars The Phantom Menace, Jedi Power Battles begins with players fighting their way through a Trade Federation ship. On Tatooine, Naboo, and Coruscant, players take down a variety of enemies and bosses, including battle droids, mercenaries, Tusken Raiders, and Darth Maul. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
I'll buy it. I'm not going to suggest that maybe anyone who doesn't have some sort of
Prior
nostalgic tie probably get too excited. But,
yeah, that's fair.
I'm going to check it out. I wasn't expecting that news whenever when I opened this. All right, so this comes from Deadline. Headline reads, Ewan McGregor says Disney and Lucasfilm are, quote, exploring ideas for Star Wars Obi Wan Kenobi Season 2. So he said during the panel, obviously between the end of Obi Wan Kenobi series and when Alec Guinness is Obi Wan Kenobi, there's got to be another few stories in there. So I guess that was there's definitely a couple. He said, as far as what McGregor would like to do in the Star Wars universe, he said, there's a couple of things. I'd quite like to wear the armor. I was speaking to someone earlier from the Clone Wars. I think that's something I would enjoy. The actor said the biggest challenge to making that happen was the aging process, saying that he would have to wear dots on his face to make him appear younger using CGI. I don't care. I'll do it. He added, and Hayden and I can really get back together again.
Man.
He said, I hope we get a chance to do another one, and I'm sure we will. He said in an interview to LAD Bible earlier this year. I'm pretty sure you know. So
it seems like he was trying, but he's like, nah, I'm going to make sure you know. We're doing this. We
talked a couple of episodes back here on our pod about the fact that it just seemed like the buzz and the actors and everyone just seems to be talking about Kenobi. Mm-hmm. And, it reminds me a lot of what happened in 2019 after the Rise of Skywalker, okay? It reminds me a lot of what happens after things that seem to, I would say, break up the fan base a little bit. Mm-hmm. You get about 3 or 4 months down the line after some fan base crushing, terrible thing. Insert the Acolyte if that's. I like the Acolyte. I'm just saying.
Yeah, for a parallel.
Then it's just like Kathleen Kennedy or Disney or Lucasfilm. Someone just says, "All right, Ewan, we need you to go out there and take one for the team and get us the fan base back for a couple years."
Yeah,
it seems to be what happens. I'm just saying. So, I mean, while of course,
difficult to see, always emotion is the future. Meditate on this. I will.
It seems obvious, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna take the tinfoil hat. I'm gonna put it right here for just a sec. What are your thoughts? And am I crazy for thinking we're definitely getting a season 2 of Kenobi?
No, I think Ewan McGregor's involvement in anything Disney Star Wars is a good sign that we're getting more Kenobi. I remember how excited he was about the show, and he didn't he help produce it?
I'm sure he must have.
He played more of a role in it than just being an actor.
Yeah.
So he was so excited about the show to begin with when it came out, and to see how badly or how excited, regardless of how Kenobi ended up doing,
right?
There was a ton of hype around seeing him back in Star Wars and seeing him and Hayden back together.
Absolutely.
So I would be remiss to think that they would take that and not do anything else with it and just let it end on the note that Kenobi Season 1 ended on.
Especially after, and I'll tie back to this here in a sec, but especially after Ahsoka and how well Hayden was received then. There's a lot of equity in Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen. And as there should be, and I hope that we get tons of stories with them in whatever way they're willing to do, and that makes sense. Like I would love to get legitimately 10 more seasons of Obi-Wan and Anakin in some way together. I feel like, of course, that would be awesome. I'd love to watch that. That said, so kind of going back to what you were saying about the show, and I'll say this. I feel like season 1 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, I will say it like this. While there may have been some things that were like, okay, you could say that there were some low lows. Like if you're willing to say that, that's fine. Nothing bothers me so much that I can't enjoy the show. But that said, there was way more good than there was bad. And you can argue how great or how bad, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, there was so much more that was good than was bad. Okay, so could the Grand Inquisitor maybe have looked a little better? Probably so. Was Ewan McGregor not great in every single scene he was in?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I just want to keep things in perspective. It's like, there were some things that could have been better.
The aspects of it that we wanted were incredible.
Was it a little bit questionable sometimes the way that things were happening with the Inquisitors and Little Leia and stuff? Yes. But also, how great does James Earl Jones' voice sound in that Respeecher app? Also, how awesome was that final scene where there's a little bit of blue and then it fades away to the red and you get Anakin on one side and you get Vader on the other and you get Hayden's voice coming through and mixing up with James Earl Jones. That was really great, right?
Yeah.
There's so much stuff that was really, really cool. So I'm very optimistic about what a season 2 can be. I just want that on record.
I am too. I think, and we've talked about this before. I've given my thoughts on how they would go about doing a season 2 of Kenobi in the fact of learn from their mistakes and not leave it where it is. I think getting Ewan McGregor back in Star Wars is significant enough. I mean, think about compared to the sequel trilogy, right? It's like Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. It was great, but there's not a demand for that character the way that there's a demand for Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. So there's not as much of a there's not as much of there's not as much fertile ground there as there would be to bring Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor back in Star Wars. So it's like, okay, maybe, if you didn't like Kenobi, maybe it was a swing and a miss. But there's still enough there that the fans are hungry for to go back to open that door again and and go do some more with it.
We're gonna talk about some of that. I can't help, but I'm gonna have to legitimately write a pitch. I'm gonna Google how to write a pitch, and I'll just pitch my Obi Wan Kenobi series to the internet. I don't know if I'm actually going to do that. Let me be careful because sometimes I say things and then it's written in stone. I don't know. I'll look into it. But that said, one of the things that I feel like season 1 suffered from is the fact that it had to change showrunners. Deborah Chow, I believe, ended up, I don't know if she carried the title showrunner. Please fact check me on that. I know that she was the sole director and sort of the creative head, I would say, for the show at the very least. And, one of the things that happened in Obi-Wan, and I think this is very important to remember, is, first off, I think it went from a film to a show, which is always come on, they're very different mediums. But not only that, whoever wrote the initial movie or I even think the initial showrunner for the TV show left. And Deborah kind of stepped in to fill the role. And she's been very upfront about that whenever she talks about Obi-Wan, say, in the Gallery documentary on Disney+, that it was not necessarily her thing from the start, that she inherited the project. And I mention that because, as someone who works with being creative, there's a difference between when you have a creative vision for a project and that's your vision and you execute it versus there's an existing vision and I'm coming in to take someone else's vision and help them with it. They're two very different things. And sometimes they can meet. There are certainly examples of people who have come in to an already existing project and made something fantastic. Think of Tony Gilroy with Rogue One, helping out Gareth Edwards. Think about maybe not quite to that same level, but not far off. Think about Solo, Ron Howard. It can happen. But, I think Deborah, number one, is an extremely talented director because you look at a lot of her episodes with The Mandalorian and they are killer. She directed season 1, episode 2, The Child. That's a fantastic episode. One of my favorites. So she's obviously a very gifted director. I would love to see what would happen if she developed a season 2.
Start to finish.
Yes, like give her the opportunity. If that's a story she's interested in telling, let's not just say because she did season 1 and there were things about season 1 that wasn't great. Let her tell her story.
Yeah.
Let her be a bit more involved. And if not her, then hopefully that she would at least be able to be there and help be in contact. Because I guarantee you that Deborah Chow, just based off the way things happen at Lucasfilm in the past, I doubt that Deborah Chow could just pick up the phone and hit up whoever was running the show before her and just be like, can we talk about this?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
And so that's just a very difficult thing. So I just want people to keep that in mind. I would love to see Deborah get a second crack at season 2, or if it's not something she's interested in, then just a creator who is there from the get-go that gets the full cohesive vision. So I'm throwing that out there for my hopes and wants and wishes for Obi-Wan. I feel like that's reasonable.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Kenobi felt a lot like The Mandalorian in a lot of ways, and I think that was noticeable because of Deborah's involvement in it.
Yeah.
So I think I can't think of anybody that would be more qualified to handle that. I did see there's a YouTuber that I keep up with every once in a while who recently interviewed the guy who wrote the original script for Kenobi.
Yeah, cool.
And
I remember his name, but it's escaping me at the moment.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but it's in my list to watch later because I'm very curious as to what that story started at compared to what we ended up getting on screen.
Yeah, it's I've heard it talked about before, and it is quite different. So,
yeah,
there's a lot of things that changed. So we'll see. In season 2, I'm gonna go ahead and pitch it. I've said before that I feel like they need to leave Vader and focus on Maul. Mm-hmm. I've talked about it ad nauseum in previous episodes. The pitch is that Maul ended up stranded on Malachor 5 before season 2 of Rebels, Twilight of the Apprentice. That finale, and we're led to believe that Kenobi's the one that left him there. Mm-hmm. I think, or that we just know that Kenobi took everything from him, meaning his entire empire that he had been building up after he took over, Crimson Dawn and all that stuff. So like Darth Maul had a pretty big empire going on, and he was trying to get his revenge, and he was really amassing it. And Obi-Wan seems to be the one that cut that down.
Yeah,
I want that story.
I would love to. Yeah.
Let's bring it back. How cool would it be if, not unlike Book of Boba Fett, maybe structured a little differently, and that's fine. Not unlike season 1 of Obi-Wan 2, there were some flashbacks, but what if we got Obi-Wan Kenobi, like as in your boy Ewan, Hayden Christensen, Anakin Skywalker. Mm-hmm. Am I saying her name right? Adriana Greenblatt, the young lady who played Ahsoka in Episode 5, Shadow Warrior of Ahsoka.
Oh, yeah.
Get the 3 of them doing some Clone Wars stuff.
give us a live action Clone Wars episode.
Let it tie in, because we know that there was some interaction between Maul and Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars era. What if we got some legit story that was kind of an offshoot of that, and we see Darth Maul interacting with a de-aged Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen, Ahsoka, young Ahsoka. Like, what if we see all of that in live action, juxtaposed against a story where now Alec Guinness, Ewan McGregor, almost to the age of Alec Guinness, is trying to take down Maul's empire. And sort of like in the way that the flashback worked in Obi-Wan season 1, where it showed that Anakin was, a bit prideful and allowed his hubris to get in the way. Obi-Wan flipped that on Vader in present day.
Yeah.
In Twin Sons, they study each other's moves for the battle. Obi-Wan takes Qui-Gon's stance, and when Maul changes to the stance that he used against Qui-Gon, and he knows that the third hit's going to be up to his face, Obi-Wan slices through that hit because he learned, because he watched their mistake, or rather, he just watched what they did and then used it against him. Obi Wan Kenobi is the master of learning from failures and learning from, and so I would just love to see that sort of play out in a season 2.
Oh yeah,
give me the Clone Wars flashbacks.
Yep.
Give me the modern day Maul stuff. Like, dude, come on, how sick would that be?
Yeah. Give us some of his like past failures in order to really continue to show how downcast he is currently, or maybe his regrets in life, or how it ultimately developed him into who he became.
Now, I'm going to go big on this.
All right.
This is a sort of out there kind of thing, and it's probably out of that budget as well, but I'm throwing it out there either way. I don't want to not give, proper credit. I know that Sir John Williams came back to do a score for Obi-Wan, a theme rather. I'm trying to look up who did the score because I'll admit that it is I'm not as familiar with who it was, and I just want to make sure that I give them credit. Natalie Holt and William Ross with the main theme for the title character composed by John Williams. Yeah. I have nothing against the score. However, I'm just being a fan on, talking about it on my little podcast in my spare room. But I would say I would love, as I think of the tone of scores, and I think of the idea of having this like dark, seedy underground or underworld thing with Maul and Obi-Wan, and this throwback to the Clone Wars and how gritty and that would feel.
Yeah.
I got to go Nicholas Britell, who did the score for Andor.
Oh, yeah.
That dude scoring season 2.
That would be
Obi-Wan
great.
Kenobi. How sick would that be,
Yeah.
dude?
I mean,
We're writing blank checks over here.
I'm thinking about Andor music, and I'm placing it over Kenobi right now, and it fits.
I could just see the final battle on screen. Because, of course, the final battle happens much later in a much smaller thing that is an animated show in a much smaller place with just 2 people in the middle of nowhere. It's small. Let's give them a big battle that's legitimately Duel of the Fates-esque.
Yeah.
And right before it happens, drop the score. And for the first time, with Nicholas Britell doing his thing with it, you hear just the vocals open up for Duel of the Fates. Like, come on.
Yeah, like tie them in together.
Yeah, with Nicholas Britell doing all of his sick beats and stuff on top of it. Dude, it would be so cool.
That would be epic.
Now I'm going to go and sample Duel of the Fates and do a hip-hop beat on top.
Please
I have to do it now.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'll be spending my weekend doing. Thanks, Cameron. Yeah, man. I'm very excited for the possibility of a season 2 of Kenobi. And I just think that my gut, it's all I got is my gut. My gut says Lucasfilm is in a better place to do a better job than what they were able to do in the past.
Yeah.
Just something, I think maybe having Iger back at the reins. Just saying. I just feel like they're going to do a better job. I am optimistic that, say what you want about season 1 of Kenobi, whether you think it's great or you think it's terrible, season 2 will be better. I'm very optimistic about that.
I'm in agreement with you on that. I think
we're just too optimistic for. I don't even know if Star Wars fandom deserves this, Cameron.
No, maybe not. We just want to spread spread the love.
We're spreading the love.
Let's
baby.
get excited about Star Wars.
Man, my voice is getting a little tired. We're gonna have to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Listen to your boy.
Yeah. Well, I was fighting. I had some throat stuff going on this past weekend too that like really wrecked me as well. So
Cameron we've not been good, y'all, but we're glad to be back.
Yeah,
and maybe we'll wrap it here to save our.
I think you can look at Kenobi season 1 and very objectively look at what maybe didn't work
right
as well, and just pull that back. There was a lot of stuff that worked really well. So it's like, let's not focus on all the negatives. Let's just use it to filter through what would give us a successful second season.
Yeah.
And do that.
And I would say just do awesome stuff. Like we're saying, like, what if there was the villain of Maul? what if for the last battle it's really awesome?
Yeah.
And what if you bring back that score? Like, and I understand that Duel of the Fates is Duel of the Fates, meaning that there was something very important that changed during that. And I would say, good. There's your stakes.
Yeah.
There's your stakes for season 2. Obi Wan Kenobi defeating Darth Maul at the end of season 2, if that was the way that it would go, the stakes would have to be big.
Yeah.
So like maybe Maul is really getting at the striking distance of a Vader or something, you know? Maybe it's really getting that serious, and Obi Wan is like, I've got to stop this, or this is going to change.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he just writing it now. Maybe because he's learned to commune with Qui-Gon, maybe he gets the sense that Luke is the one that is supposed to approach Vader. And that if Maul were to approach Vader, that it would get in the way of Luke approaching Vader. And so what I'm saying is maybe that really, like, even the Force has made the stakes high.
Yeah.
Like, do something like that, man. Just make it awesome.
Yeah,
like Cameron said, learn from the mistakes.
Pull on that fear that Obi-Wan, like, drive Obi-Wan back into how weak he felt watching Qui-Gon die.
Yeah.
Like, bring
watching
that...
Satine die.
Yeah,
know?
bring that, like, that horror and that fear of loss back to Obi-Wan as a more matured man who's learned from those kinds of things. And, like, bring it back in to really cause you to be like, oh no, is he going to choke? Because there's so much pain, like, behind who this person is, or he's going to be he's going to be tempted to be too headstrong because he's just got to end him.
I do want to say this. I like where you're going with this. I'm going to amend it just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just, you know, we're in creating mode, I guess.
Yeah.
He really did in the first season. The first season in a lot of ways was Obi-Wan's hero's journey. And so I would say by the time he got to the end, he really dealt with a lot of the trauma from the past, which is what allowed him to be so open to Leia at the end of the episode.
Right.
However, I like what you're saying, and I would pitch it more like it's like these are temptations. Like, is Obi-Wan going to be able to go against a Darth Maul with the memory of what Maul took from him?
Yeah.
His master is, you know, his, I guess, you know, lover. Like, we want to feel that, and I love the way that you're bringing that up. And I think that if it feels like something that almost would tempt, you know, because he's the guy now. Like, he's definitely gone through, and he's Obi-Wan the White. If this was Lord of the Rings, you know.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, I like the idea of there still being some temptation there, because even if you kind of become the sage. There's still going to be temptations in life that you have to go up against.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Well,
that.
That's what I'm saying. Like show that struggle in him.
Yeah.
But then allow him to come through and defeat Maul because he can pull himself out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because of all the things that he's had to go through.
Right.
You know, we talked about it. Ties back in nicely to Kanan. It's because of all those trials that he went through that ultimately made him equipped to be able to do the thing he needed to do. And so we could see Obi-Wan do that same
and
thing.
You know how, you know, and not to make a bad dad joke or a pun, but like,
Hold on, buckle up.
We know how menacing of a like person Darth Maul is.
Right.
Like, he's gonna like pull at everything he possibly can to get you off balance, because he just pokes and he'll find all your buttons. So, you know, I can see this exchange happening where he's trying to throw Obi-Wan off his balance by throwing stuff in his face. Remember when I killed your master?
Yep.
Or, you know, remember when I killed your lover? You know, what do you have left? All I've been able to do is take from you and destroy things in your life. You know, to try to play into that rage.
Yeah.
And then watch Obi-Wan have to fight with that to maintain his balance and then pull through and defeat him.
I wonder if they go so far as to just be like, you know what? The flashback episodes, it's Maul taking over Mandalore.
Oh, yeah.
And like they show Satine.
Yeah.
They show the death. They show that. They show a young Bo-Katan. Maybe Bo-Katan is involved in the current day setting of season 2 of Obi-Wan, where maybe Bo-Katan's there as they're trying to, maybe she's integral to taking Maul down.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just so many options. There's definitely, I agree. Number one, I agree with Ewan. I'd be happy to have a season 2. Number 2, I agree. There's tons of stories you can do. My hope is that they pick some good ones.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of great stories, and there's a lot of things that Filoni has laid the groundwork for, and I want that.
Yeah, just give it to us.
Give us what we want. Come on, Star Wars. You know you want to do it. You know you want to be awesome for us.
You want this win. You want this win.
You want for us to talk about how much we love you. I know you do, Star Wars. Okay, all right. I think that's it. You got anything else?
No.
Let's land the ship. We'll be back next week. Maybe we'll be talking about Obi Wan Season 2 being confirmed.
Yeah, maybe.
Or Jedi power battles. I don't know. Whatever, who knows? We're going to be talking about Star Wars, though. Cameron, do you have any plans? Are you leaning more towards rewatching Ahsoka or rewatching Obi-Wan now?
Ooh, I think I need an Ahsoka rewatch.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip this. Heads, Ahsoka, tails, Obi-Wan. Ready? I'm watching Ahsoka, baby.
There you go.
Let's go. All right, so we're going to watch some Ahsoka. Hopefully you're out there watching Star Wars, having a good time like we are. Let us know on YouTube. Appreciate you hanging with us. Till next time, Tyler out.
Cameron out.
This party's over.